What's going on, guys? Here's another video for this week. And so if you've been tracking along, we've been going through this book, Cornerstones. It is part of what we call here the 30-30 challenge. So usually it's the first of the month. I try to explain it again. We're just telling people, like, find time, 30 minutes a week for the next 30 days. Just try to do that, right? So that's about 4 or 5 weeks. But if you don't have a Bible reading plan, if you don't have that already together, then I would ask that try to start something. So get in the Word. If you're already in the Word, then take some extra steps to add, right? So if you're one of our adults, I would highly recommend do the New City Catechism. Can you see that? There you go. It's so white and can't be seen. New City Catechism. But if you're one of our families, we're doing the book Cornerstones. So hope you can do that with us. Here is the question for today. So if you're starting new with us today, here's one I think it'll be important to ask, and it's kind of hard to think about. But question is Jesus God or man? Right? So, I mean, this is something for you to think about. If you've got kids, you want to ask this question: is Jesus God or is Jesus man? And there's an answer to this. It might seem a little tricky, right? Because the answer you might want to say is, some might say, and at least in church history, they've tried to hammer this out. But in error, people would maybe say, well, maybe he's 50-50, right? So for the whole person, maybe 50% God, 50% human. Some in church history tried to figure out, like, is he more God than he is human? All of those are error, right? Because I really, one of the things that we're going to look at the answer, and I'll try to walk you through the best way to figure this out. What we need to affirm as Christians is Jesus is both fully God and fully man. He is 100% God, 100% man. Now, if you say that's 100% and 100%, that means 200%, right? Well, okay, not entirely. Maybe in math, yes, but let's try to affirm what the Bible affirms. So track with me, because we're trying to, while I love doing the Cornerstones book, I don't want you to accept things because it came out of a book. Or I don't want you to accept things because I say it, but I want you to look and ask the question, is this in the Bible? Like, let's actually try to just wrestle with what the Bible teaches. And there are some things, guys, that when we try to wrestle with it, we recognize, like, okay, some of these things, we're going to affirm and we're going to just be okay with it. It's a mystery sometimes to try to figure out the incarnation and all that. So let's track and let's try to go with this. So I think the first thing we need to do is ask the question is Jesus fully God, right? So here are some things to think about. Paul writes in Colossians 2:9, the entire fullness of God's nature dwells in the bodily in Christ. The entire fullness of God's nature. So all of God dwells within Jesus. That's incredible to think. He's not saying partial. You don't get just a little bit of God. That Jesus is fully divine, fully God is what Paul says. Even look at this exchange in John 10:30 through 33. And I and the Father are one. Now, that's a statement that we may or may not quite fully understand, but the Jews did. They understood it. Look what that says, verse 31. The Jews picked up rocks to stone him, and Jesus replied, I've shown you many good works from the Father. For which of these works are you stoning me? We aren't stoning you for a good work, the Jews answered, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself God. You see, Jesus was made it very clear that he was God. And so we see that. We not only see Paul affirm it, we see Jesus affirm it. Here's other things that you might want to take note of. And this comes if you have the parent guide. I think it's a great one to think about. The picture comes like this. When you begin to see who Jesus is as revealed in the scriptures, Jesus claimed to be eternal. You'll see references like that in John 8:58. 17:5. Jesus said, I'll be with you always, even to the end of the age. Think about what that means, that Jesus is omnipresent, like what we see God is. But think about what that means, like even to the end of the age, like forever, right? There's another eternality piece of that. We know that Jesus showed his omniscience. You'll see that Matthew 16:21, Mark 2:8, Luke 6:8, and so on. Jesus claimed to be omnipotent. and had this incredible power. Look at Matthew 28:18, Mark 5:11 through 15. Jesus claimed to forgive sins. That's, remember, Mark 2:1 through 12. And remember, that was one of the things that people said, who can forgive sins except God alone, right? Jesus gives life. We see that in John 5:21. And so we do also need to affirm that Jesus claimed to be God by the things he was claiming. And so that was why it's important, if you've gone through the Cornerstones book so far, is we've spent a lot of time talking about the characteristics of God and recognize that as Jesus is claiming these, he's claiming all of those characteristics for himself. So the Bible attests to Jesus being fully God, and yet Jesus also attests to those characteristics that are of God as well, and he claimed to be divine. Okay? Next one, though. Jesus is fully man. Look what we see here, and this is from the Apostle John as he's writing in 2 John, verse 7. He says, many deceivers have gone into the world, and they do not confess the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. This is the deceiver and the Antichrist. The New Testament church was adamant to understand that God didn't just show up in some sort of a form, but he was fully man. To not claim the humanity of Jesus, John says, is Antichrist. A couple things you need to think about, especially if you're at Royal Palms right now and we're going through our series on in Matthew. Some of the things that we note about Jesus' humanity can be seen right there in the text, right? We see that Jesus was born and he grew. I mean, he started as a baby. Natural birth completely of what started in Mary's body and came. He had a normal birth. He grew up like a normal person, started his ministry as an adult. We know that he hungered and he thirsted. He often grew tired. He needed, time to rest, to be alone. We know that he bled and he died. We know that even at the very end of his life, or at the end of the story, right, when he's about to ascend after the resurrection, he says, hey, come touch my body and see it's real, it's physical. And so we also need to affirm these things too. And so we can't say he's half and half, right? We can't say he's 50-50. We must affirm, because the scriptures affirm that he is 100% God and he's 100% man. Just a little church history for you. If you want to know a little bit more, there was called the Council of Chalcedon, or Chalcedon, depending on how you want to say it. You can always just say, I've heard it both ways, which I have. But anyways, you'll find that one of the confessions that they came with, because they're trying to wrestle with this concept of fully God, fully man. Here's what they came up with. And I think this is a helpful statement. Jesus recognized in two natures, God and man, without confusion, without change, without division, without separation, the distinction of two natures being in no way annulled by union, but rather characteristics of each nature being preserved and coming together to form one person in substance, not as parted or separated into two persons, but one and the same Son and only begotten God, the Word, Lord Jesus Christ. And so what they're saying is he is fully God, fully man. He's not some sort of like hybrid form, but he's fully God, fully man in the same body, one person, and yet those two exist there, and he is one person. It's kind of hard to grasp your mind, but we can't give up on that. We must affirm that because the Bible affirms that, and we need to be comfortable with that and live in light of that. And guys, you get off into some really weird areas if you don't affirm those. You can get into some really weird territory when you begin to let up and say, well, he could be sort of more one or the other, or partial on the other. No, hold the line on that. Recognize he's fully God, fully man, and he existed, and he still exists, right? Because he is fully God, fully man. But that's what we see in his nature and his care and who he was in the incarnation as well, right? I love it. Just one more time to kind of think of that: without division, without separation, the distinction of natures being in no way annulled by union, but rather characteristics of each nature being preserved and coming together to form one person and substance. I love it. All right, I hope that's helpful. We'll talk to you guys soon. Let me know if you have any questions. You can put those in the comments or shoot me an email. But continue on. Think about this. Go a little bit deeper if you want to. If you want to go deeper in your own time, I would look at some of the heresies that came prior to, right? Because you might find other groups that hold certain heresies about the divinity and humanity of Christ that you can see now be able to point those out and understand those better. You might actually need some checking up on what your position has been. And I think this is a great statement that we see here. It's a great teaching point, but we've got to go back to the Bible and say it affirms both and be comfortable with that. Okay, talk to you guys later. See you soon. Bye-bye.